Okay. All right, so what I'm going to be explaining to you is a feature of NWEA called Student Profiles. And I'm also going to be giving you some things that I've picked up along the way of how to print reports that are useful. For those who don't know me, I teach 4th grade at Buchanan Intermediate. My name's Tabitha. You can leave questions in the chat, and when I get back to the Meet video from when I'm sharing my screen, then I'll answer them. If I don't answer them and you have a question later, you can always email me. So what I'm looking at right now is the homepage when you sign into NWEA. Now, the quickest way to get to student profiles, which is what I'm going to be mostly talking about, is to click right here where it says experience the student profile. But you can also go over to your left-hand menu and click on Map Growth Reports. And that's going to take you to the list of all the possible reports that you can pull. The good thing about going from the homepage of the reports is that there is a new way of filtering over on the left where it says filter by. If you are trying to get information to help plan groups or even just to monitor student growth or anything like that, then this new feature, you can sort the reports by student level, and that's going to only pull up the report styles that are student by student. And then you can also click where it says what I'm doing. So if I'm going student level and I want to monitor growth, then that's going to narrow down the types of reports to just the ones that would be helpful. If you want to talk with students and families, then there's a family report. That wouldn't really be helpful if you're trying to plan instruction for groups or even independent learning. So from your homepage on the reports, then you are going to go to where it says student profile. You are going to need to enter all of the information for your class. I've already gone ahead and pulled up a student that I had last year, and I'm going to do my best to not use her name just for confidentiality purposes, but if I do, we all understand. So the basics of the student profile, when you pull it up across the top, there's going to be just the quick summary of what was tested. So my student tested in math and in reading, and it's always going to default to the last tested term. So if I want to switch between math and reading, I simply just click on it. That shows me her overall score. And then there's also a breakdown of what her possible score range could have been, how long she took the test, if there was any rapid guessing, and the term that it was taken. The charts at the bottom where it says comparisons, that's just a quick look of her growth and her achievement. So her growth, she was in the 82nd percentile for how much she grew from fall to winter when we tested again. Achievement, she was in the 61st percentile. One thing that I really like about the student profile is that underneath comparisons, it gives you a projection of if this student continues on their same course and then they do state testing in the spring, that they think, or the projection is that she would land in the proficient category, just based on her growth and her achievement thus far. Readability measures are the reading level based on the questions that she was able to successfully answer and the complexity level of those. On the slides, on one of the screens, I've linked a text level correlation chart that would help you compare what Lexile level compared to DRA or compared to the other systems, so that way you know what book or what reading material to get for this student. If you expand the comparisons, then it's all the same information, but there's a couple extra pieces. This graph in the middle, or this chart, excuse me, is just a visual representation of growth and achievement. So she is in the high growth, high achievement category. That's why her little dot is here in green. So if I close that, instructional areas, these are the sections of the overall subject. So when she tests reading, we do reading and evaluating literary text, informational text, and vocabulary. One of the great things about student profile is if a student is really needing to beef up an area, then it's going to label it as suggested area of focus. The way that the program figures it is that the score in that area is compared to the overall score on the test, and then a standard error deviation is applied, and then it's determined what the strongest meet is. And that standard error is going to be, if you expand the instructional areas, it's this little plus or minus 6.1. So if you see suggested area of focus, then that might be a great place for you to do lessons with this individual student. Or if you go through your whole class list and you pull out where their suggested areas are, if you've got multiple kids that need to focus on evaluating literary text, that could be a small group or a mini lesson. I know there's a lot of information to cover, so I'm going to stop periodically. Are there any questions so far? Okay, so if we keep going on the instructional areas, you can sort the information by topic or by standard. By standard, then you can also choose grade level. You can choose grade level on topic also, but it's more useful by standard. Where it says show learning statements over toward the middle, if you click show, then it's going to have all of these specific skills that are underneath that standard that the student is working on. Hide makes it just the standards listed. Over on the right is probably the most important part for instruction planning, where right now it's going to default to check as develop, and that means that these are the skills or the parts that are on the current working level of the student. If you go to reinforce, those skills, they'll still be in the same overall category, but they're going to be skills that the student probably has mastered. So if you switch to reinforce. If you switch from develop to introduce, then those are skills that are a level above where the student currently scored, and it would be used to introduce challenges if the student is needing a challenge. If you have all of them selected, you'll notice that there's some that are grayed out and some that are in black. It doesn't mean that those skills are different. It just means that they're different complexity levels. So the ones that are in black are going to be for that current level. If you only have one highlighted at a time, then they're all going to be in black. Okay. You can toggle between the areas. So suggested area of focus for this student was evaluating literary text. But I could go through and look at all three parts of the reading assessment and see where she is excelling, or maybe if there are areas that if she worked just a little bit, that would boost that part of the score even higher. Because it's the sub areas or the sub strands that are averaged together to get her overall score. So on this student, if we had, well, we tested in the winter, we obviously didn't have spring testing, but she was in a group that worked a lot on the skills that would go into this strand, and I was hoping that it would be able to bump this score from 199 to a little higher, and then that would bump her overall score up a few points. The next area, growth goals. I don't really have have much experience using the growth goals, but it would be like if you use the old goal setting worksheet trying to figure out the score that you're giving your kids as their target for testing. Down at the bottom, growth over time is any test that this student has done while they were at Branson. And the really cool thing that I found on this, if you come over to the menu on the right and click where it says map, then it's going to overlay where the levels are on map scores. So this student, if she continues on the track that she's going, right now, she is riding the line between basic and proficient. Map, same thing. This little dot here is where she would be on map. So student profile has a lot of data in it, and it's really worth the time that you spend looking through it. In order to get from student to student, you can go over to the right side of the screen, and there's this little menu that has the person and 3 lines that you can click on different students, or you can use the arrows and just switch back and forth. On the top left, where it says term, it's always going to default to most recent, but you can go through and toggle to any of the terms where this student would have been tested. Now, we did fall and winter last year. So if I wanted to look at this same student's fall score, I could click to fall, and then I could see where she scored in reading versus fall and winter. Okay, so just checking. Any questions so far? Okay.
Yes, Tabitha, sorry.
You're fine.
I noticed that you are recording it, which I am so very thankful that you are doing. Because I have a feeling that when we do the NWEA testing, that's when I'm really going to need to refer back to this. So where will I be able to find your recording so that I can use these to help me once I have the data in front of me?
The recordings are being compiled into a folder on Google by Dr. Brenner. And once they're all compiled, I am not entirely sure how she's going to be pushing that out for the rest of us, but they will be available. And the slides that I created are going to go through step by step of what I'm explaining, and they're another reference that you can look back to.
Perfect. Thank you.
So looking back at the student profile, I would spend, if I was going to use this for planning instruction, then obviously I'm going to spend most of the time for this student in that area that needs extra work. If there is an area that a student really excelled in compared to others, then it would say, it would list it as, I'm trying to look at that too. Relative strength is what it would be called. And that just means that out of the areas that are tested, that was their strong point. So using the student profile, I would go through and then I created just a tracking chart for my kids, and it worked for me to be able to have it all in one place. It really was not that long of a process to fill it out, and I had their map scores, their overall scores, and then student by student, I went through and I put the scores in the substrand from each testing session. And this gave me more information on how to work with students and how to group them and how to make sure that I was best meeting their needs. This also helped me see by the end of our school year what students had made growth, what students didn't, and the students that didn't grow, I was able to identify, okay, do they need to be referred for testing? Is it because of absences? It was just a way for me to really make sure I'm not letting any kids slip through. So what I did on this spreadsheet, once I had the scores in place, I went through and I just highlighted any area where they might have gone down in score, or if there was a relative or a suggested area of focus, Then from those highlights, I made groups, and those groups of kids would work on skills that were within that strand that would help improve their ability to answer the questions that would go along with that area. So I did link a blank version of this to the slideshow. These colored boxes here, the conditional formatting is set to the 2015 norms. I don't have an updated version for the 2020 norms that just came out. And it's set for 4th grade. So you would be able to either take the formatting out, or if you wanted to make your own version or not even use it at all, that's up to you. So the big part of what we do is using data to drive instruction. And some ways that I use the student profile and use the NWEA data is by their readability level, being able to make sure I am picking reading content that is on their level, or when they're ready, a challenge level, so a level or 2 above where they're working. You can use it to group students by RIT level, their suggested area of focus, or even just their lowest substrand. So if they are doing excellent with literary and informational text, but vocabulary is a struggle, then I could go through my list, and any kid who's struggling with vocabulary, I could pull them into a small group, maybe during intervention time, or alternate between literature discussion and vocabulary groups. So that way those skills are being built, but it's not just one-on-one. It can be in a small group. Some different tips and tricks for the different types of reports. The class report, which I can show you what that looks like. We go back to the reports home screen. Class report is going to come up right here. At the bottom of the screen where it says report options, if you just need it for basic data collection, or you're trying to get your list of students, then you would sort it by student name. But if you sort by test RIT, that's their overall score, then it's going to list from lowest score to highest score where your kids landed on the test. And so then I would take that report, and if there's 4 or 5 kids that are either at the same level or 1 or 2 points away from each other, I would group them together, and they would do reading in a group that way. If you want more targeted skills within that group, then I would recommend going to the class breakdown. Because once you go through and select your class, let's see, it was winter 2019. Leave it by RIT and then click View Report Online. It's going to give you some interactive features that could help you really focus in on what your students need to work on. The first screen is just a breakdown of where your whole class scored overall. If I go over to the left and click where it says Language Arts Reading, then that's going to be a breakdown of the 3 areas of reading of the informational, literary, and vocabulary. And that's going to show me, okay, so these 5 kids here all scored in the 191 to 200 range. So it might be useful to put them in a group together. And then this is just a further breakdown of the different areas. So all of these students here, like these 5 from here over, it would benefit them quite a bit to work on vocabulary. But this student's vocabulary work is going to be much different than these 2 students' vocabulary work because they're at such different levels. So that's another way to even further sort your groups. From this stage, if you click on one of the specific areas, then that's going to give you a continuum or a class view of where the students are with those skills. You can click on, so this analyze craft and structure, if I do the drop-down menu, it's going to show me where those students are and then what some of the skills are within that range of where they scored. I believe that's all the components I needed to show you. On that last slide, I listed some additional resources. There is a report summary that's created by NWEA, and basically it's just a quick description of what the different types of reports are and how they might be useful. The new score norms for 2020 that have just been released, and then also teacher toolkit, which is kind of like help desk for NWEA. Okay. So what questions do you have?
This was extremely helpful, Tabitha. Thank you so much. It's amazing how much is there that is usable. It's as though the NWEA test isn't the end, but rather the beginning of where you can really start growing the students.
Right, and for our reporting purposes, most of the time, all we use is that overall score, but that doesn't really help us know where our kids need to work. I thought it was really interesting, like on that student that I showed you as the example where, yes, her overall score was grade level, but her section on literary text was below level, and that's what brought her down. So if we could close that gap a little, then her overall score is going to be even higher.
I love how it shows, what it compared to with the map test as well, and where they would be. That's really helpful too. And as you say, even breaking it down to those sub scores, and it just provides so much information in teaching the students throughout the year and where you want them to be.
Right, and it's going to take time to dig through it and really compare or write down what you need for each student, but in the end, that's going to be worth it because then you know they're getting what they need. So if you do not have any questions or any things that you want me to clarify, you are welcome to sign in. It's on the last page of the slideshow, and email me if you do have questions later, but you're free to go. Thanks for coming.